Hi, I'm Professor Jason Ellis in the Department of English at the New York City College of Technology in Brooklyn, New York, otherwise called City Tech. And in some of my classes, I go over with my students how to create resumes, cover letters, and prepare for the job search, interviews, doing research on companies, etc. I thought about making this video and creating an open lab site where the video would be embedded, as well as including some sample documents of sample resumes and templates, sample cover letter and a template might be useful for other students at City Tech and students in my other classes. So that's the idea behind this video that I'm making right now. So what we're going to go through is some background on what to do as you begin the job application process. Then we'll look at different types of resumes. We'll look at the job application letter or cover letter, and then other advice about how to prepare yourself for the job search, professionalizing yourself, etc. So let's get right into it. So preparing for the job search. Well, the very first thing that I advise all students to do is to make the job search itself a education. And what I mean by that is that you need to use the resources for finding jobs as a way to educate yourself about how are job listings worded, what are they asking for, what are some of the important key words that you need to pay attention to. So here I offer some advice to read, study, and take notes of job listings on LinkedIn.com, Monster.com, Indeed.com, etc. I advise students away from using maybe more informal resources for finding jobs, especially like Craigslist, where you can run into a lot of scams. But I think with these more reputable sites, such as LinkedIn.com, it gives you some assurance that the job listings that you're looking at are authentic and being genuinely offered. Also, one of the nice things about these websites, LinkedIn.com, Monster.com, and Indeed.com, is that you're able to create a profile, upload a resume, which I recommend students do. They want to put their materials out there in many different places. Make sure that they're up to date. Make sure their contact information is up to date. Because you should always be looking for the next opportunity, and sometimes that opportunity may come calling to you, especially once you're established in your career. A recruiter might reach out to you about an opportunity that you otherwise weren't aware of. But if you don't, in a sense, have a signpost out there pointing the recruiter's way back to you, then you may miss out on those opportunities. So these are very good ways to put your name and your skill set out there for others to see, as well as to use those resources to educate yourself about the job market and what is on offer right now. I say here also to pay attention to keywords and specialized jargon. That's not just about recognizing what is needed in these various workplaces and how you might be able to meet them, but that you'll want to learn and internalize that same language in the job application materials that you create. So if they have a certain phrasing of things, they use particular acronyms, then it's safe to say that in most cases you can use those same acronyms, jargon, etc. in your materials so that your materials mirror what is being asked for, as long as, obviously, as I say here at the very bottom of this slide, remember to be an honest and ethical job hunter, meaning that you can't make claims to things that you can't actually do. I mean, you can, but that would be wrong, and if you get found out, you'll get fired. And then obviously that's going to be like a bad reference in the future. So you obviously don't want to do that at all. But you do need to learn like what kind of language is being used in the fields relevant to your particular job search. And I say here, Incorporate appropriate and accurate language used in job listings into your job search materials. So once the more job listings you've read and that you've studied, and I recommend you make notes on these things and keep those notes someplace that you can refer back to, that over time you'll get a better sense and a better idea about what you need to include and how you should phrase things in your job application materials when you're applying for these jobs that you want. Now, another important aspect of that, besides studying the job listings themselves, is that you want to learn about the companies that you might be applying for. And here, just the easiest thing that everybody should do, no matter what, is just to do Google searches and to search social media for what people are saying about these particular companies. Now, I'm not saying specifically about what their latest stock price might be, or what problems they may have run into with a product regarding safety, for example. What you want to be looking at and searching for is what people are saying about what it's like to work there. What is the culture like of that company? Because these are important things that you need to know in order to decide whether you even want to apply for these places. And then if you do apply, how to prepare your materials and to prepare for your interview with these companies. Because whenever you go into, let's say, for example, a job interview at IBM versus a job interview at Google, the experience is likely to be very different because these two companies have very different cultures. IBM is seen as more staid and uptight, whereas Google is more open and more, you might say, free-spirited. Now, of course, this has changed over time because Google itself has become a very mature company. But the more that you can learn about these companies, the better equipped you're going to be in order to not just apply, but also to prepare for the possibility of an interview down the road. Now, the second point I make here is that you should make use of your free, if you're a CityTech student, your free New York Times account to search for the company's name and see what results come up. If you haven't already done this, all you got to do is go to nytimes.com/passes. And then you can sign up using your CityTech email address for a free 1-year subscription to the digital version of the New York Times. Why that is super cool, besides saving you a lot of money on a subscription to the Times, is that you also have full access to all the back issues and the search feature for all the back issues. So if you want to search for a company's name, you might find out some other nuggets of information that might be beneficial to your preparing job application materials for that company. Also make a note here of using library.citytech.cuny.edu's databases. As I tell my students in my classes, that you will be doing yourself a good service to make use of the library's resources that you have access to as a student. Because once you leave CityTech, you don't have access to those things anymore. And while theoretically you could buy access to all those things if you're uber wealthy, most of us can't do that. So while you're a student and you have free access to this wealth of information, make use of it. So I'll show you here real quick that I make a mention here of going to find articles and then go to the business section. So I'm going to hop out of the presentation and then go over to the library's website. So this is library.citytech.cuny.edu. And if you scroll down on the home page here, click over here where it says Find Articles. And you're probably familiar with this already, but I just want to point out, if you scroll down under Find by Subject, under Humanities and Social Science, there's this one link for Business and Technology of Fashion. Well, we're not, while some of you may be fashion majors, for those of you who are not, I don't want that to throw you off, because if we click on this, we'll find that many of these databases here are focused very broadly just on business. And so you can search for a company's name in these databases, and you might find out more information about them. We have the business collection offered by Gale, Business Source Complete by EBSCO. If we scroll down a little bit more, let's see. And this is another important one here, LexisNexis, or what's now called Nexus Uni. This offers access to news, business information, legal information, which can also involve businesses. So these are good places, these are good databases to use to find out more about these companies. And so make use of that while you're still a student before you graduate and leave City Tech. And then obviously last, make sure that you use your network and build your network. One thing that I do tell students about building your network, especially with a tool like LinkedIn.com, is that it isn't advantageous to simply grow your network by like adding a bunch of connections, like asking people to form a connection with you. What's really valuable and useful to you is to foster and build relationships through your networks on LinkedIn.com, on social media, through in-person contacts you may have met, both through your classes, your internships, as well as outside of school. And when I say like foster and build your relationships with these people, is that you want to stay in touch with people. And not simply like, send like a short like hello, hi, but occasionally like touch base with people, find out how they're doing, tell people what you're up to and ask them what they're up to so that you can establish communication and let people keep you in mind based on the types of things that you're doing and how you're doing, but also showing an interest, honest interest in what they're doing, which can let you know more about them, which might kind of key you into different opportunities. But once you've made it, you're in your career, you might know of opportunities that you can then share with people that have shared your opportunities with you. So it's a two-way street, and you should always keep that in mind. Don't think of the kinds of connections that you might make with LinkedIn.com as Facebook friends. Okay, where you just like, okay, I'm this person's quote unquote friend, but it's like you don't actually maybe talk with most of the people that are on your friend list on Facebook. Whereas with those connections you make on LinkedIn.com and other places, you should put in a lot of work and effort to maintain a connection with those people, because they can help you and you in turn may help them one day. Now, before we actually get into talking about writing your resume, the first thing that I have students do is to build essentially their own database of everything that's relevant to a resume. And so you create a document. I would suggest you creating like a document on Google Drive, Google Docs, or a Microsoft Word or Apple Pages, one file that you always have access to, that you keep safe somewhere, saved in the cloud, on a flash drive, and 12 different places, so you never lose it. But in this document, you want to collect all the information that you can then use to make your resumes, to make your job application letters, your cover letters. And this document should be where you always go to update all that information, so that when you're writing a resume, updating a resume, you can go into that document and pull out the relevant information. Because the thing is, like with a resume and a cover letter, there are very specific constraints with how they are written. So you can't fit everything into a resume and the cover letter. Whereas this document can be the place where you save all that information and pull it out as needed. Another benefit of having this one document with all this information in it is that you can either print out a copy or have a copy on your phone, laptop, tablet, so that when you actually go in, let's say for an interview, the employer might say, well, we need you to fill out some information. And it could be information you've already given them. That doesn't matter. They're going to ask for it again more than likely. But by having this document out, you'd be able to fill in all that information very quickly. And it would be accurate. That way you're not relying on like your infallible memory. you'd have something in black and white or on a screen that you'd be able to look and see all the right information on. And we're talking about names, dates, phone numbers, addresses, all that information that's relevant should be in that document so that you can pull it out whenever you might need it. And I mentioned here at the end, update this document over time with your changing education, like as you gain education, as you gain certifications, any new skills you learn, new software, new tools, new hardware, all of your job experiences, any volunteer work you do, if you get any accolades or honors, awards, all that goes on there. Nothing's too small to include on it because you don't know if something might be useful or relevant to you later on whenever you see a new opportunity come up. Now, this job search info document, here's some more detailed bits of information that you should include in it. And you might build out headings on the document so you can divide everything up and keep it straight about where different information is located in it. So like your education history, degrees, the schools you attended, specializations that you had. What was your GPA, both in your major as well as cumulative? It's good to know both of those things. Then, of course, also what dates, like when did you graduate from a particular place? If you're still in school and beginning to apply, you need to know the dates where you began as well as your expected graduation date. Another thing to keep in mind with this is make sure like you do use the correct names for your degree. Make sure you know if it's a BTech or a Bachelor of Science, a Bachelor of Arts, whatever it is. Make sure those things are accurate. And if you need to, if you're not quite sure what it is, a very easy way to do it besides looking at the City Tech School's website is you can look in the City Tech College Catalog. If you're not aware of this document, it's very easy to find. You can just do a Google search for City Tech College Catalog. The very first link that's going to come up is going to be a link to the listing for the college catalog. Click that link, and then on the page that loads up, you're going to see another link that takes you to the PDF for the college catalog. Now, why am I making a big deal about this? The college catalog is basically your Bible for the college, for your college experience. It includes all the details and information about everything from tuition and scholarships to your major. And there'll be a section in that for your department that houses your major. It has all the right names, all the right degree titles, etc. Contact information for the chair of the department. All that stuff is in the college catalog. Incredibly useful. You can download a copy and keep it on your computer so you can just pull it up and look at it anytime you need it. So use that as another resource as you're writing out your job search info document. Now, after education, all of your work experience, doesn't matter how small or unrelated to what your major is, include it. Make sure you include your job title, the official job title, the locations where you might have worked, what city and state, the responsibilities you had there. List out every single thing you did at a particular job. If you handled money, if you had to organize the schedule, if you were responsible for closing, opening, whatever it might be, nothing is too small for the job search info document that you're going to make, because you might go back into it later and find little significant details that you can pull back out to include on a resume or a cover letter. And then again, also remember dates. You might include a section for any leadership opportunities. If you are a president or an officer in a club or in your church, in a social organization, a community organization, it doesn't matter. Anything at all where you might have been a leader on a school project, any of those things, put that down. Include dates, details, information, that anything you can remember that's relevant. Any special projects you might have been involved in at school, in a job, and volunteer work, that might be something that you should include and talk about. Have a section for all your skills, like everything you know how to do. And I'm not talking about like Napoleon Dynamite, like you got ninja skills, you got kung fu skills. I'm talking about like any software you know how to use. Include version numbers. Include like a guide for how proficient you are. Like if you have mad skills for writing in C, put that down. But if you're like only got like beginning aptitude with Python, make sure that you make some kind of distinction about like how much more you know about C than how you know about that other programming language. And you might use a scale. You could say like, you're advanced in one, but intermediate in a second, but beginner in a third. You see, you can use the scale of beginner, intermediate, and advanced or expert to distinguish those things. Any other abilities that you might have that might be significant? Certifications that you've earned, whether they be online certifications, certifications that you've paid and tested through, anything like that. And if there's like any kind of grade or scale or other kind of recognition, make sure you include all those details. Communication skills is a very important thing to recognize about your resume and for your cover letter. And what I mean by this is, what kind of experience do you have in terms of maybe technical writing or other types of written communication? Do you know how to write reports? Do you know how to write memos? Have you given any public speaking, such as like maybe a presentation at the research day at school, or maybe you've given a lightning talk, a Pakachka, or any of those types of things. But the idea with listing out communication skills is not just simply say like, oh, I know how to write a memo, but give some examples. And one of the things that I have my students do, and that I tell them about, is that you can create your own e-portfolio on OpenLab. While you're a student and after you're a student, you still have access to that. So what's useful about that is that you can collect together any of the work that you might have done on OpenLab and other classes to give as examples of your ability as a communicator. So like if you've written a report or you did a research essay, whatever it might be, you could add those things into your ePortfolio, put those links into your job search info document so you can pull them out maybe if you need them later on. But you would also know like what class that you did them in, who was your professor, all that kind of information included in the job search info document, so that you might include some of that if necessary as evidence of your communication skills. Now, why am I making such a big deal about communication skills? I mean, many of you may not be going into what you think of as a communication job per se. There's a lot of research that shows that many, if not most, job searches and the managers that are conducting them are looking for people that have strong communication skills. Because if you think about it, even though you need specific like tech skills and for which is true for most of you in the types of jobs you're going into, that you're not working with those tech skills alone in a bubble, far away from everyone else, right? You're working with people on a daily, hourly, minute basis. And you need to be a good communicator in order to work with others, to collaborate with others, to be on a team. And so those people that can show they have good communication skills, good skills for collaboration, teamwork, being able to negotiate with others, to speak publicly, all these types of things go a long way. And so the more that you can show that you know how to do, the better. And if you don't have really good examples, this is a really great time to try to develop some of those things. There's no reason why you can't write maybe a sample memo, a sample research report, etc., to add to an e-portfolio of your own to demonstrate you know how to do those things. So communication skills, very big. And then you definitely need to have a section for references. And I don't mean like just get your 3 references and you're done. You want to have a variety of references if at all possible. And so with all your references, you need to have names. Make sure you get their correct name, their correct title. Or is it, someone who has like, just a higher degree, so there would be a Mr. or Mrs., or do they have like a advanced terminal degree, like a PhD, so there'd be a doctor. Make sure you know those types of things. The title they have at the school, for example, or in the business. Are they an executive? Are they a professor? Their phone number, their email address, mailing address. Keep all those things. And you might make notes about what kind of reference they may be. So like if you need a reference to show that can like speak to your communication skills, well, you might want to get a professor at school to do that. Or if maybe you're a Toastmaster, I don't know, you could talk to some of the people in your organization if they can serve as a reference that you're a good public speaker. All of your past work experience, ask managers, co-workers, all of them can attest to different abilities and skills that you have. And so you can, whenever you apply to certain jobs, you can select from these different references to create your resume, your cover letter, and then also whatever references that are asked for by the potential employer. So you can mix and match these things. That's the whole idea behind this job search info document, is that you have options. And if you don't have these options written down and you're just trying to think of them off the top of your head every time you need them, you're going to miss things. And those might be missed opportunities that cause you to miss a job opportunity. So make sure you write all this stuff down and keep track of it. And as I make mention here, maintain these contacts, okay? You want to stay in touch with people. Just for example, I'll show, I know this is very small, but like this right here, this is a small card that I received from my high school Latin teacher. I still stay in touch with her. She's like a really big deal as a mentor to me that helped me get to where I am today. And she's somebody that I would consider not just a mentor, but I'm sure I could ask her to be a reference. But I maintain that contact, writing letters, calling. Whenever I'm back home visiting, she's someone that I always see. You need to do that for those references that are going to mean the most to you, because building that relationship and letting people know what you're up to helps them be better references for you, because they can speak about not just what you can do, but what they know about what you're doing now. So now, resume. These are some of the basics. For most folks just starting out, it's a one-page maximum. That means you do not want to go over one page. One page, single-sided. As your career advances, then you can have a longer resume. But at this point, you stick to one page. One of the main reasons for this is that you can imagine when people are applying for jobs, an employer is getting like hundreds, if not thousands, of applicants. And if you send in like a 4-page resume, I guarantee you they're not going to look at the last 3 pages and what might be relevant to you getting that job, maybe on page 3 or 4. So stick to one page and customize that document for each employer as much as possible. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. I suggest avoid fancy templates that come built into Microsoft Word and other word processors. One of the big reasons for that is that unless you're like going for a design job, you don't necessarily need to show off like some sort of flashy resume, because that's not what's going to get you an interview. Because what the employer's looking for are specific skills, and that's what they focus on. And if you distract them with something that's fancy and over the top and kind of weird, in all honesty, they may use that against you and decide to put you into the trash pile. So just go with something plain Jane that you design yourself. So I say build your own from scratch. Now also make it easily readable. You want to choose a single font type. Okay, so you can go with Times New Roman, you can go with Arial, and a million other ones, but make sure that it is a simple font. You don't want something like New Gothic, because if it's hard to read, and it's kind of strange, from a professional business perspective, that can be something that counts against you. Also, more than likely, your resume on the first round is not even going to be read by a real person. There's so many systems now that use machine reading to review resumes that basically your resume is going to be scanned in either by you when maybe you upload it to the say the job application portal, or it could be scanned in if you give a physical copy to your the job offering employer. The manager, or maybe like someone under the manager, is simply going to feed it through a scanner. It's going to be fed into the computer, saved in a database, and all the text is going to be pulled out of it. So if you use a lot of different fonts, make it like really weird and strange, like text following curves, that sort of thing, it's going to make it so that the machine reading can't actually read your resume, and it may fill in like weird characters, etc., and it won't be readable by a human being later on. If that's the case, well, obviously you're not going to get called for an interview because they couldn't read your resume. So make sure it's easily readable, single font type, and use size and bold in your resume to distinguish headings and titles. Okay, so you don't need to do anything fancy with that. Now, I recommend you have a strong go-to resume, like a general purpose resume that you can use, like when you go to, like, say, a job fair, you can hand out copies, or to have one like in your bag that you can always pull out in case that opportunity comes up and someone wants to see your resume. But then you also want to customize resumes for those top jobs that you really, really want, the ones that like have like the place that you want to work the most, or are located in the city you want to work in the most, or that have the best benefits, or whatever it is. Those places that you are really hungry for, you will want to customize your resume using that job search info document that you've already made to pick and choose the parts about your experience and skills that really speak to that job listing better than your general purpose resume might. Okay? So this is the idea behind having that job search info document, is that you can pull that information out that you need to build these custom resumes. Now I'm going to talk to you today about two types of resumes. One is a skills-focused resume, and this one I think is really great for entry-level positions, people that are just starting out. It's also good because, like, when you have less career experience, you can't really foreground that any work experience yet. What you're really drawing on is your education, and that's where the skills-focused resume can help you out. It emphasizes what you know and what you can do. But now the other type of resume we'll look at is the experience-focused resume. This is more like a traditional resume. It emphasizes your work experiences. Of course, your work experiences will illustrate what skills you've had in those work experiences, but it doesn't foreground the skills first. It foregrounds the experiences that you've had, your educational experiences and your work experiences. Now, the general resume parts. So these are like the main areas that almost all resumes will have in one place or another. You always want to include your name and contact information at the top of the resume, okay? Make it big so it's easily seen, easy to read. You always want to include an objective. Now, I know some people, like, for a variety of reasons, say that objectives are no longer useful or no longer read or paid attention to. But it's for that very reason that many people aren't using them anymore. I think might be useful to you to include an objective, because it allows you to say something else about who you are and what you're trying to achieve. Now, the thing about objectives for resumes, like when you're seeking a job, keep this in mind. You don't want to say in the objective something about how working for this company is going to help you fulfill something that you want, that the job is going to give you a valuable experience to push your career to the next level, something like that. Don't do that. Because from an employer's perspective, they are wondering what value you are going to bring to their company. And so if you're just talking in your objective about how the company is going to enrich you, well, just to be honest, they don't care about that. What they care about is what are you going to bring to the company. And so for your objective, you want to focus on, what kind of position you want in what kind of field, and how you're going to, through that position, do great things for your employer. Okay? You want to emphasize that. So your objective should be to land a position with a particular title in a given industry at a certain type of company. Like, do you want to work for a small business or do you want to work for an enterprise, for example? And then that you're going to be bringing some value to the table. And we'll look at a couple examples. You got to include your education. Now, for you all you need to include is your college education at this point, okay? You don't need to include your high school education or obviously anything earlier than that. There can be exceptions if there's something special about your education. Like, let's say you went to like a science or technology magnet school and you did some kind of really cool project there that you won an award for, that you want to mention on your resume or in your cover letter. Well, then you would want to include that high school experience on your education section of your resume and then talk about it in your cover letter. But if you're not doing anything like that, leave off high school. Just focus on your college stuff right now. During the interview, they may bring that up or ask you where you went to high school, and of course you can talk about it. But let's not take up valuable space for that unless it's absolutely necessary. Now, you can include information about relevant coursework that you've taken in college that's prepared you for the job that you're applying for. You should include work experience, even if that work experience doesn't apply for the job you're seeking. The reason for that is if you do have work experience, you're able to establish that you've been continually employed and or continually going to school. From an employer's perspective, if they see gaps in your timeline as you going to school and going and working somewhere, if there's gaps in that, they're obviously going to ask you about them. So if you can avoid those gaps, make sure that you include any information that attest to what you were doing during those times. List all relevant skills that you have. Again, unless you're applying to be like a computer programmer, part-time ninja, don't include the ninja skills on there. Only include things that are relevant for the job that you're applying. Now, there may be skills that you have that aren't obviously relevant, but if you want to include them on the resume and then talk about them in the job application letter, in your cover letter, you can do so. But again, as I'll talk about later, make sure that what's on the resume is in sync with what you write about on your cover letter. If something is not on the resume, do not talk about it in the cover letter. They need to be in congruence with one another. You can also include awards, honors, special qualifications, like what languages you do know. Are you multilingual? Is your language skills spoken and in writing? What would you say is your skill level? Are you an expert or like a native speaker in another language? Are you proficient in another language? Include that gradation in that as well, so it indicates to the employer that you are multilingual and what level you're at in your language ability. And I recommend including your references on your resume at the bottom. And the reason for that, some people like to say like references available upon request. Why not just go ahead and give them to the potential employer so they can start calling the references right away? that gets your foot in the door sooner than if they have to come back to you later and say, hey, we are kind of interested in you. Can you give us a list of references? That takes time. Time is money. Time is like taking away from your opportunities. Give them everything that they need up front. That way they can then begin following up on those things and hopefully giving you an interview sooner rather than later. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of examples. Now, these examples I have linked on the Open Lab site. So I don't want you to think that right now it may be difficult for you to read these on the video, but you can go back over to the Open Lab site and download these and look at them while you're listening to me talk in the video. Now, this particular sample resume that I built is a skills-focused resume, okay? And you can see that I've given the fictitious George P. Burdell, front and center, that's his name. He has an address. I indicate what kind of phone number I'm including. That's his cell phone number. And then I give his email address. Now, what I would recommend to you all is make sure you use your City Tech email address. Because, even after you graduate, you still have access to your City Tech email. And this is useful because using that proves that you are or were a student at City Tech. I know it sounds very simple, but if you're using some rando email address at whoknowswhere.com, it's good. That may be like the normal email address that you use, but the problem with it is it doesn't tell your potential employer anything that's relevant to your job search. Well, it can, and I'll mention that too. But for here, it proves that you're actually a student or graduated from City Tech. You can go into your settings later and set it up to forward emails to another email address, so you can still access your email from Gmail or other places. But as far as that signpost email, use your City Tech email address. That goes a long way. Also, if you insist on using your own personal email address, make sure that whatever that email address is reflects on you professionally. I have seen cases where students will use very inappropriate email addresses on resumes. And that right there will just get your resume thrown into the trash pile. So make sure that you're using something that always reflects professionally on you. So beneath that, I used Microsoft Word to draw a line. So I have a line going on, dividing the name block at the top from the rest of the information at the bottom. I centered the section heading, so objective, a section heading for skills and accomplishments, a section heading for employment history, education, professional studies, special qualifications and honors, and then references at the very bottom. So for objective, I wrote to plan, create, and manage technical writing needs within a team at an enterprise IT firm. So I'm giving some keywords that I'm interested in working in a team of technical writers. I say what kind of place I want to work at, an enterprise internet technology firm, not like a small business, not a medium-sized business. I am very explicit with the type of position I'm looking for and what kind of work I'm interested in doing. Now, because this is a skills-focused resume, after my objective, I give these subsections of the types of skills and accomplishments that this job applicant has made. And I divided them into different subheadings based around what they are. So management and skills related to that is one section. Innovation, like where did I do something or this person do something interesting and going above and beyond. Design and layout included something for that. And then technical expertise. And this is where I give what kind of skills I have with different software and other technologies. So the idea here is you can make up your own subheadings And maybe you can do a Google search for resume um, heading words. There's websites out there that create lists of these things. I'll try to find some of them and add them to the Open Lab site just as reference. But the idea is like you create your own subheadings around your skills and your abilities that highlight what you want to show the employer that you know how to do. Um, Management, leadership, those are always in high demand. The technical expertise is a must for all of you. But then after that, you can look at the job ad and the type of job you want to see what might fit best. After the front-loaded, foregrounded skills stuff, I then go into my experience. Okay, so you see skills focus puts the skills up first. Below that, I get into the experience stuff. So I give my employment history. I just give a title, the title of the company, name of the company, where it was, city and state, and then what years I worked there. If maybe you didn't work there over years, you might include the month and the year. That way you can break it down. Like if it's only like a 6-month job, you work from January to June. That's fine. Education. Again, only give your college education. You want to say what kind of degree it is. Here's a Bachelor of Science in, what is the full title? Professional and Technical Writing, comma, New York City College of Technology, comma, gave the graduation date, May 2019. And on the second line, I give what my degree specialization was, or George P. Burdell's specialization in communication design, because many of the degrees at City Tech have different specializations. Say what that is. If you minored in something, put that minor on there. Any other like special accolades that you get with your degree, make sure they're included in the education section. After education, I listed if I'm a part of a professional society, like where I might have membership. I've paid my dues, I'm a member. So if you're wanting to be a technical writer, the Society for Technical Communication is where it's at. You need to be a member no matter what. If you're not a member, it's going to look weird. But another thing that's important about these professional societies is they can help you find jobs because they expand your network. You get to go to meetings, you get to go to job fairs that only members of those professional societies get to go to. There's likely professional societies for your majors as well that you'll want to ask your other professors about and find out what they are so that you can join them when you may want to join them before you graduate, like maybe your senior year, so you can go ahead and begin getting the literature, the journals that you'll subscribe to, all that stuff, and become a member in good standing with those societies. Now, after the professional societies, I had room for special qualifications and honors. So I gave information about other languages that I know, French and Latin. I mentioned that I'm a computer overclocking enthusiast, which for this applying for a technical job shows that I'm interested in computers. So why not put that on there? That's a hobby, but it's a hobby that's relevant to the type of job I'm applying for. And then I also mentioned that this person is an Eagle Scout. If you have any kind of special rank or award from other organizations or from Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Explorers, include that on there because that goes a long way to showing a potential employer that you have the qualities, that you have the characteristics of someone that would have earned a rank or an award like that. I can speak from personal experience as an Eagle Scout. Putting that on resumes has immediately opened doors for me and is always a great talking point on interviews. So anything like that you have, include that on there. And then at the very bottom, I included a section on references. Now, the way that I did this in Microsoft Word is I created a table at the bottom, a table with 3 cells. In each cell, I included one reference. So that way I could bracket it off and make it look nice on the page. And then, of course, I took the border away from around each of the cells. But include the name of the person that's your reference, their address, phone number, email address, their title, where they work, etc. And And then, of course, make sure these are people that you've already asked that to be a reference. Don't include someone as a reference that you haven't asked to do that for you. That can be something that can shoot you in the foot later on if that were to happen, because someone might get a cold call asking you to be a reference for you, and they may say, "Well, I don't know that person, or I don't know who that is, or I don't remember them, or I don't have time." But if you've established a relationship with that person and asked them, "Hey, can you be a reference for my job applications?" Well, they say yes, then you know that there's someone that's going to speak well of you. And you can also ask people, like, if you're uncertain what kind of reference they'll serve, you can ask them, "Would you be a strong reference for me?" And if they say yes, then that's great. You can include them. But if they, him and ha, or they're not sure, well, you may not want to ask them to be a reference, because you only want people that are going to speak highly of your skills and abilities, work ethic, etc., on your resume and on your job application. All right, so that's the skills-focused resume. Now, this next one is the more traditional type of resume. It's an experience-focused resume. So again, at the very top, I include a big block with the applicant's name, the address, phone number, email address. I drew a line. And of course, you don't have to draw a line. This is something that just from design and layout I wanted to do with the resumes I built. But there's other things that you can do as well. After that, I included sections with the headings to the side rather than directly above to better make use of the space of the page. Again, I give the objective to plan, create, and manage technical writing needs within a team at an enterprise IT firm. Education. Now, in this case, you can see that I added information for my major GPA as well as my overall GPA, because you want that major GPA obviously to be the higher one. But if maybe your overall GPA is lower, that's okay. You might not even include the overall GPA. You can just include the major GPA to show like that's where like you really excelled. That's totally fine. They may ask you for the overall GPA, which you can give them, but you don't have to necessarily put that if that's something that's not going to reflect as well on you. Now, this is a case because I'm talking about my experience. I wanted to include the specialized courses that I took in the major that are relevant for the job I'm applying for. So here, specialized courses, specialized communication for technology students, introduction to language and technology, writing with new media, digital storytelling, etc. But all of these courses, I just created a bulleted list and then inputted the exact titles of those courses. Now, in my cover letter, I could write about some of those courses, or maybe in the interview, I could speak about how some of those courses prepared me for the job if I get called for an interview. Now, the next section, project for real client. You don't have to include something like this, but this was something I wanted to add because I'm applying for a technical writing job. I wanted to include like an example of something that this person had done for a real client in the workplace. And so this was an opportunity to say something where this George P. Burdell had actually done real work and what kind of work it was that was related to the job that he's applying for. You might include maybe a project that you did as part of like the solar decathlon or any of the other types of opportunities that go on at City Tech. So you choose to put that in or leave that out depending on what your experiences are. Now beneath that, you can see I have work history. Now this work history is different than the one on the skills-based resume. I'm going to scoot back over there. You see here skills focused, and you can see the employment history gives no details about those places that George P. Burdell worked. I go back over to the experience-focused resume, but here I'm including what George P. Burdell did at those different jobs. Now, the things that I'm listing that he did here are related to, going back over to the skills-focused resume, what's at the top under skills and accomplishments. Okay? So the information's all the same. It's just organized differently. so that it's putting different information in front of the reader's eyes in different places to foreground certain things and then background others. So returning to the experience-focused resume, here you can see under work history, job title, job, the company, place, dates, and then bullet points for the different kinds of work that George P. Burdell did at those places. Now I created another section underneath that for special qualifications and honors. Again, there's lots of different words and combinations of phrases you can use to describe these different sections. Here, I included that he was vice president of a professional organization, which shows leadership skills. Also included for him being an Eagle Scout, information about his Eagle Scout project, which might be relevant to the job. So it's showing that he was an organizer, that he led people. He's going to be working on a team, so he needs to be able to lead people. And then with references, here instead of building that 3-cell table across the bottom, I used a hanging indent to show each of the 3 references as being distinct from one another. And I included name, title, place of work, phone number, and email address. So you always want to include that information so it makes it as easy as possible for your potential employer to get in touch with those references. Now, if you start running out of space, things that you can leave off include like maybe the address of your reference. Just include like their name, title, place of work, phone number, and email address. So again, you have to pick and choose what information you include in order to maximize your use of that one page for your resume. Some other advice about resumes: don't make the font too small. Make sure it's easy to read. Like 10-point font is like the absolute smallest you'd want to go. And even then, I would still recommend using 11 or 12-point font just because it's so much easier to read. Now you can play with the margins on the document. By default, usually you use 1-inch margins, but in this case, you can see I reduced it to 1/2-inch margins so I could fit more text on the page. So you can do similar things like that. But again, make sure everything fits on one page, single-sided. So next, let's talk about the job application letter, or what's also called the cover letter. Now, the things to keep in mind with this is that the job application letter makes an argument. The argument that you're making is that you're qualified for the job you're applying to. And if you aren't like very specifically qualified, like let's say, for example, they're asking for a certain amount of experience that you may or may not have. Well, you say that you're qualified and you have experience in other ways that make you well fitted for this particular job. So you have to account for however, in whatever way that you can, obviously being, accurate and ethical and honest, but you make the claim that you're qualified and you give a reason for that. It makes the argument that you add value to the company. What are you bringing to the table that's going to add more value to the company to help them complete their goals, do what they need to do. And it also makes the argument that you deserve an interview. Now, you don't necessarily say that in the letter. You can say, like, of course, I would be happy to sit with an interview with you. But keep in mind that your resume and your job application letter do not get you the job. All they do is earn you the possibility of an interview with the company. And then once you're in the interview, it's up to what you say and how you interact with the person about whether they actually give you a job offer. So just keep in mind what these documents actually do. That the resume and the job application letter do not get you the job. They get you the interview, which then may give you the job offer. Now, in addition to that argument, if you're making an argument, you got to provide supporting evidence for the argument. So you need to add details, a story, anecdotes, etc. about relevant details on the resume. Again, remember the resume needs to correspond with what you put into the cover letter. Don't put things in the cover letter that aren't on the resume or vice versa. Now, on your cover letter, you can leave out things that are on the resume, but everything in the cover letter should be referring to things that are in your resume and that you're expanding on. You're basically saying more things about what's on the resume that couldn't fit on the resume itself, the details, the background, the context. So again, the resume and letter work together. Now, what parts go into the job application letter? So you need to make sure you include your address and date at the very top. You skip a line, and then you include the name, the title, and address of the addressee. So one of the things about applying for jobs, part of your research should involve finding out who you're actually interviewing with. A lot of job listings may mention that. They may say who the hiring manager is or who the contact is. Well, that's who you put there as the addressee. If you're not quite sure, it's okay to reach out to the company, whether it be, well, if we weren't in a pandemic, you could go in person, but right now you probably want to call them or send them an email, and you just introduce yourself. Say, hi, I'm a soon-to-graduate student from City Tech, specializing in this field. I am interested in applying to this position. I just wanted to ask you, who should I address my cover letter to? Or who's the point of contact on this? And they'll likely get back to you and let you know that information that you can include. Then, of course, you give a salutation to who that person, dear Mr. So-and-so, dear Mrs. So-and-so, dear Dr. So-and-so. You use that title. Then you're going to have like a very short paragraph in which you state the position that you're applying for as it's spelled out on the job listing. Don't make up something. Use what they use. Again, build like a connection between your materials using the jargon, the same terms that you see in the job ad. So you say the position that you're applying for and you provide a thesis statement. That thesis statement is, I'm applying for this because I am an ideal candidate with a background in X, Y, and Z. I am a strong candidate for this position because X, Y, and Z. Give reasons. Now, the body paragraphs are supporting what you say in the thesis statement. I mean, if you want to think about it like you're writing a thesis, you're writing an argumentative essay, just like you did in English 1101, 1121. That's exactly what a job application letter is. You're making an argument. You're trying to convince this person reading it they should call you for an interview. And so you got to support everything that you're claiming with evidence on the resume and then what you're saying in the cover letter. Then you'll have a concluding paragraph, very short, where you give your contact details and say, of course, I look forward to speaking with you in an interview, or I look forward to interviewing with you at your convenience, something like that. Then you give a closing, sincerely, comma, give maybe 3 lines of space, sign your name. If this is a digital letter, you can use Microsoft Word, or you can import like a picture or scan of your signature, put that in there, and then skip a line and then write your full name out. You type it out. And then at the very bottom, say if there's an enclosure, which you should be, because if it's a cover letter, it should be a cover letter for a resume. So your enclosure will say enclosure, resume. So here we have this example cover letter. Again, this is on the Open Lab site, so you can go there and download this. So at the very top, I give, you can notice first off, everything is left justified. This is kind of like a professional business type letter, okay? So I start off with the applicant's address. This is George P. Burdell, but I don't put the name at the top. I only give the address, and then I give a date, the day that I'm sending this. Then I skip a line, then I give who I'm writing to, who is the John Gieske is the managing member of this job that I had found a couple of years ago. Dear Mr. Gieske, comma, I am applying for the position of technical support engineer slash help desk manager advertised on monster.com. So I'm telling him the exact job title that he used in the original listing. I tell him where I saw it at. That can be useful information to him. He may want to know, like, which works best for getting future job applicants. So I'm helping him out. That's good. It shows that I'm, not someone that's just, not a helpful person. You want to show, like, you in these small ways that you can be that way. I believe, so this is my thesis statement. I believe that my work experience, educational background, and commitment to helping others use computer technology would make me a valuable contributor to the work that you do at Somerset Technology Group. So I'm dropping in the name of the company again, and I'm laying out all the things about myself that could add some value to his company. So in the next paragraph, I'm going to begin building that evidence in the first part of my thesis statement. The first part was work experience. My 10 years of work experience at MindSpring Internet gives me a practical knowledge of a range of Windows-based operating systems and server-side applications. I worked with a team of support members who collaborated on solving difficult client problems and supported one another's ongoing technical training through workshops and technical tools such as the web-based virtual applications that I built for our team and share on my professional blog. And then I give a link to my professional blog. These gave team members visual cues to the client-side operating systems and applications they were supporting over the phone and by email. So I'm giving some more details about the special stuff I did. While I do not have an MCSE certification, that was something asked for in the original job ad. So I'm saying, like, okay, I don't have that, but I believe that my experience and technical support tools demonstrate my technical know-how and professionalization in the IT field. So I'm trying to make another argument, a sub-argument, you might say, that even though I don't have that certification he's looking for, that my work experience kind of prepared me for all the stuff that an MCSE certification does. Second paragraph. Here's where I'm getting into my educational background, the second part of my thesis statement. While working full-time at MindSpring, I completed a Bachelor of Science in Professional and Technical Communication degree at the New York City College of Technology, a senior college within the City University of New York. So I'm really trying to play up what City Tech is. All this is accurate information, but I'm saying something to someone who may have no idea what City Tech is or why it's important. So I'm helping him understand that. This program empowered me to specialize in computer information systems while developing a stronger communication and collaboration skill set. I developed heuristics or shortcuts for managing time, resources, and people by taking leadership on several major projects, including one in which I led a team of 4 peers, meaning classmates, to write a report on the public-facing Wi-Fi authentication system, create brochures to help students connect their digital devices to the network, and deliver a presentation to campus stakeholders about how to improve access for students. These communication skills, combined with my past technical work experience, would enable me to manage the help desk team and create a set of training materials and modules for new hires. All right, so several things going on here. I'm connecting my educational experience to my work experience. I'm talking about how I worked with other people in a team-based setting, much like the job ad is saying you'll be working on a team. But now I'm adding something that the job ad doesn't say anything about. It doesn't say that the candidate will be creating these training materials. I am taking initiative in thinking, well, what might someone in this position need to do to help the company out? I'm giving an idea, saying, I'm capable of doing this in addition to all the other things that I need to do in this job. So I'm building a case and I'm adding more value than just simply me being skilled and having the educational background that I need. And I keep saying I, but this is my fictitious George P. Burdell. From when I was a leader in the Boy Scouts, so this third paragraph is connecting to the commitment to helping others. So from when I was a leader in the Boy Scouts and teaching my grandfather how to get online and send an email, to now, when I help others use internet technology in the workplace and in nonprofit groups like the Science Fiction Research Association, which I mentioned on the experience-based resume, I enjoy working with others and taking the lead to support the goals of my organization. I would like to carry on helping others, clients and coworkers. So I'm saying people that are paying us to do work for them, as well as people internally in our organization, by joining the team at Somerset Technology Group. You see, I dropped in the name of the company once again. I'm trying to build like rapport, trying to acknowledge that this is a company that I know the name, I want to be a part of. Now, this last paragraph is that short contact information paragraph. If you have any questions, please contact me by phone. I give my phone number again. Even though I know it's on my resume, what if they lose the resume? What if the resume gets eaten by a dog? I don't know, but I'm giving them my phone number again. Or by email, and I get the email address again. I would, of course, be very happy to meet you at your convenience for an interview. I thank you for your consideration and look forward to hearing from you soon. So a lot of nice things to say to this person. And then I close it sincerely, comma, I sign George P. Burdell. And then underneath that, I type out George P. Burdell. And then I say enclosure, resume. And so again, this sample is on the Open Lab site that you can download and use as a model writing your own. One thing I'll say before we move ahead is that with all these documents that you write, make sure that you have someone peer review all your writing. Okay, first off, that means ask friends, ask family, bribe them with donuts, pizza, tacos, ice cream, all the good stuff. But say, please, will you look over this and see if I misspelled anything, if I wrote anything that sounds awkward or needs to be rephrased? Because one thing about resumes and cover letters is that because employers are getting so many of these from different job applicants, they're looking for any excuse to disqualify you. If you have typos, if you write it in a way that is hard to understand, any of these types of things can get your application thrown in the trash pile. So make sure that you look over this and make it bulletproof before you send it in. So even after you have other people look at it and give you feedback, read all of your documents aloud, just like I did when I was reading this aloud to you. Because I did that when I was writing these originally for my students years ago in order to make sure I didn't leave any mistakes in. And I found lots of mistakes by reading it aloud. And the reason for that is when you read something aloud, you slow down your thinking. You use different circuits in your brain to think about your writing than you would if you read it silently. Because the brain, naturally will kind of cover over mistakes when you read things silently that you otherwise miss unless you read it aloud. So do that. It's a pro tip. It's something I still do today with any writing that I do. So in this next, leading up to the last phase of this video presentation is about your professional online presence. So again, make sure that you create accounts on LinkedIn.com, Monster.com, and Indeed.com. Tie them to your CityTech email address. Create portfolios. Use all that information in your job search info document to fill out the different websites. Upload your resume to Indeed.com and Monster.com. LinkedIn.com allows you to build a profile that's much more robust than just a resume. Do that. Get someone to take a really nice photo, like a headshot, from chest up of yourself that you can put on these websites that show you as a professional, right? You want to be wearing a suit or workplace clothing. You want to look good for the camera, good lighting, a non-busy background. neutral background if possible, so that it really lets your image pop and lets the person see who you are as a professional. And again, don't use anything that makes you look unprofessional in these situations, okay? I would also recommend that you create an online portfolio, like I mentioned before. It could be your own on your own website. Like I have a professional blog at dynamicsubspace.net. That's my professional portfolio. But I also have a teaching portfolio that's separate from that I host on OpenLab. So you can have multiple portfolios that serve different purposes that you can link to, like on your resume or your job application cover letter. And of course, you can link to them on LinkedIn.com, Monster.com, and Indeed.com, because they're another way to show off what you know how to do. OpenLab allows you to create an e-portfolio where you can copy content that you've written in other classes and plug it into your e-portfolio automatically. Makes it very easy. So look into that. Look in the help section of OpenLab, there's a special section for e-portfolios. Now this next point is very, very important, folks. Go through and scrub the internet of any of your past accounts from when you were younger, or even maybe accounts you still use today that may put you in a very bad light. Anything that you might have written, get rid of it if it makes you look unprofessional. Past messages, images of yourself that may be tagged with your name. Get rid of all that stuff. Recover like lost passwords from accounts that you used when you were a teenager, for example, and then go to those different platforms and delete those accounts. Get rid of them, because you don't want anything to potentially torpedo your opportunity for like a job or for your career taking off because of something you might have done, said, or be seen doing in the past. So scrub all that as much as you can. And one thing I'll mention about that is if you think someone may not find out something that you think is maybe well hidden or is not obvious, I guarantee you that it can be uncovered. And one thing to keep in mind is a lot of employers now are actually paying special companies that scour the internet to build essentially dossiers on job applicants. And so they search all the social media sites. They search forums. They search different websites online, and they uncover all this information that they can link back to you, maybe link through an email address or link through a similar username. And they can then provide that to your employer or potential employer, and either you get fired or that you don't get hired or get a job offer because of something you did in the past. So get rid of as much of that as you can if that's a problem. Hopefully it's not for all of you, but if it is, be aware of that and take care of it. Now, for those of you that do want to keep social media accounts, you should professionalize them as much as possible. In terms of like what you use for your profile image, lock down those accounts so that if someone isn't a friend or a connection, they can't see everything that's available. But keep in mind that even though you may consider social media accounts personal, as far as an employer is concerned, they're not. Anything you do or say that could potentially reflect poorly on your employer could be something that could be used to dismiss you or not give you an opportunity. So keep that in mind, because you see a lot of these cases in the news where something that someone does outside of work comes back to cause them to maybe lose their job. So you want to have all that locked down. And if you think something that you do may potentially cause you to lose your job, you may want to ask yourself, should you be doing that at all to begin with? It's just things to keep in mind. But now, if you are professionalizing everything, making everything like look top notch, and maybe even creating separate social media accounts for your professionalization, because there's no reason not to have a separate Twitter account that's like your professional persona, where maybe you retweet things or write about things relevant to what you do. Well, create links between those accounts and your LinkedIn.com profile, your Monster.com profile, etc. That's actually a good thing to do, because it's another way that you can show off what you're capable of doing, what your knowledge is, and what it is you're doing. Now, in this last part, I just want to say a little bit about the job interview. And I'll provide some links. I'll collect some links that might be useful to you about the job interview. So, with a job interview, the best way to prepare for the actual interview, once you get that offer to come in and speak with someone, you want to find lists of job interview questions online. They're everywhere. Look at those lists of questions and study them. You want to write answers to those questions in a notebook or maybe on a new document that you create on your computer or online. And use those answers to practice what you would say. Like say it aloud, read it aloud, put it away, and then say it, just using your own memory. Now, there's kind of a double-edged sword here. The reason why I say that you should write answers and then practice them is that it helps you recall what is the best thing to say for a given question in a given interview. By doing that practicing, it helps you become more familiar with what you might actually say in the moment. But don't learn it so much that it's just memorized and that when you're in the interview, you just say it like very quickly or too quickly, like unnaturally quickly. Like you still want to use natural cadence and volume and pacing when you're in the interview, so you come off like a real person and not like a robot that's just simply memorized responses. But you do want to know what your response might be well enough so that you can be natural in the interview and not be so nervous that you flub an answer or hem and haw or like you take a lot of time to answer, which takes time away from your other responses. So practicing is good, but don't practice to the point that you just memorize it and then rattle it off real quick. You don't want to do that. Also, conduct mock interviews with friends or family. And when you do that, record your side of it. You don't need to record your friend or your family member, but record you in video so that you can listen to your responses and see like where you might pause, where you might stumble, where you might like hem and haw too much, and also any like tics or unconscious things that you might be doing as you're speaking. Like are you like hopping your foot up and down, or rattling your fingers on the table, or rubbing your nose, or playing with your ears, or tapping yourself on the head, whatever it might be. Look for anything that's kind of weird that you might do unconsciously so that you can unlearn doing it when you're actually giving your interview. That's why you want to record it and play it back so you can both hear your responses and think about how you give the responses and any nonverbal language stuff you're doing that you might want to eliminate during the real interview. And that's why I say always debrief. That means talk with the person giving the mock interview so that you can ask them like, what did you notice? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What things can I work on? How can I say something better? Everybody that you work with on this is going to give you another perspective and give you more ideas to make your real interview that much stronger, that much better. And you have to think about, you want to put this work into it, because if you don't, well, one, I mean, you may just go in and ace it and great, you get a job right off the start. So that may happen to some people. But when you're up against a lot of competition, some of that competition has degrees from more prestigious institutions that may have more work experience. By God, you want to do everything you have control over to make your job interview as powerful and as persuasive as possible. So by doing this due diligence, by doing this extra work, you're going to be making yourself sound and appear so much more confident and knowledgeable and capable that you hopefully will be the one that gets the job offer. Now, some job interview tips related to like your practicing. Consider Mr. Orange's story in Reservoir Dogs. Now, you can find this clip on YouTube, or you can rewatch Reservoir Dogs, a really great early Tarantino film. But the thing about Mr. Orange is that he's an undercover cop, and he needs to infiltrate this organization to be a part of this jewel heist. Well, the thing is, he has to have a way in. He has to way to prove to his potential employers that he actually is a criminal. And so the way he does that is by learning a story. Now, the story is not just something that he reads and that he then recites back verbatim. No, he learns like what are the main points, and then he creates his own personal story, his own narrative around those points, so that when he speaks it and delivers it in front of the other criminals, it sounds natural. It sounds like it belongs to him. Well, with your job interview, you're needing to sell yourself. You're needing to sell your experience, your abilities to this potential employer. So everything you're talking about are things obviously that you know about that are intimately a part of yourself, but you need to be able to speak to them naturally in a way that can connect to someone who doesn't know you, that doesn't know anything about you. And so by using stories about yourself or small anecdotes, those things can anchor what it is you have to say about yourself in response to interview questions. Like give examples and have those examples be rich, not too long. You obviously don't want to tell like a 5 or 10 minute story in response to one question, but that's where practicing comes in, where you can bring it down to like 1 or 2 minutes maximum for a little anecdote in response to a question. And also be prepared with questions to ask your interviewer about. And I'll provide some links on the Open Lab site with different questions that you can ask about. But one of the cool things about at the end of the interview, when the interviewer says, well, what questions do you have for me today? Well, one key tip I can give you is that you should always preface one of those questions with something else about you relevant to the question that you're about to ask, but to use it as an opportunity to sell yourself again. So, for example, you might, if you were to have a question to ask about like the culture of the company, you could say something about that you've had really great experiences working for companies that have different cultures. So, what is the culture like at your company? So one, you've reinforced the fact that you've had different kinds of work experiences, what I prefaced it with, before actually asking the person what is the culture of their company like. So again, use that preface, that introductory phrase to say something about you that relates to the question you're about to ask them. It's also a way of cushioning it. It's like if you're a little too direct, a little too point blank, it could seem like you're being combative, and you don't want that either. Now, this last point with online video interviews versus in-person interviews. Right now, because of the pandemic, a lot of interviews are all being held online. And so some of the things you want to research are like how best to set up your video conferencing environment to have the best possible interview. Some of the things that I recommend is put your camera that's attached to whatever device you're using at eye level with you, okay? So that the camera is looking directly into your eye. I think it's better to stand for an interview. There's something different about how you carry yourself and how you talk when you're standing. So you can put boxes and books up so your laptop or phone or tablet are on that, and you stand in front of it so that's eye level with the camera. Also, make sure you have really good lighting. One way to do that is you can position a light directly over your camera so the light directly reflects off your face and into the camera. You could use a ring light that some people use, for streaming, would give similar results. Because the idea is you want to make yourself look as good as possible for the camera, because that's all they're going to see of you before you decide whether or not to give you a job offer. And also, like both online and in-person interviews, you dress the part. That means you should be wearing, like, in most cases, a full suit, or at a minimum, very professional-looking business attire, because you want to look the part. You want to show them that you are a professional, and that you want to work as a professional for their company. Oh, one other thing about in-person interviews, I always recommend that you bring to the interview a small portfolio. So like if you want to look real professional, get like one of those leather folder portfolios. They're open like this, and inside you have on one side a notepad, and on the other side a little folder flap that you can put pages in. And inside this portfolio, you'd want to have extra copies of your resume and job application letter, maybe a page of links to your portfolio, other things. And then on the notebook side, that's where you can keep notes during the interview, because even though you're being asked questions, there's no reason you can't have a notebook out. And the same is true for an online video interview. Have a notepad out so you can jot things down as you're being asked questions. Like if you want to make sure you remember something so you don't miss in your response, use the notebook, your notepad for that. Now, with this last stuff, during the job search and after, again, you want to develop and foster your network. You want to make sure that your network is there to help you. You want to prioritize your applications. So for like those top 10 jobs, like those jobs you want more than anything in the world, those you spend the time to customize your resume and job application letter for those jobs. That means your resume needs to be edited. That means your job application, your cover letter needs to be rewritten so that it specifically addresses what those job listings are asking for. But now, obviously, there's a lot of other jobs you're going to be applying for. You may not have time to customize everything for all the jobs. So for those, that's where you have a generic all-purpose resume and a generic all-purpose cover letter, where all you have to do is maybe change names and the job title and the company name. Make sure you do that correctly, obviously, then send those out. But prioritize, where you want to send the fully customized guys, because you do want to fully customize your stuff for the best jobs you're applying for. During the process, don't give up. It can be disheartening, like you send out a lot of job apps and you don't get any callbacks, or maybe you get interviews but you don't get job offers. I mean, even for me, applying for this job at CityTech, I applied to over 100 different schools before I got an interview for CityTech. So, I mean, this is something that we all have to go through. It's not something unique to the jobs that you're applying for. So don't give up hope. You just keep chopping wood, carrying water. You keep at it. Now, another thing I make mention here is about always filling gaps in employment. That means like if you're graduate and you're still not getting a job, you need to be seeking out additional education. Go for a certification. You need to be volunteering like with a social organization or for the city or something. Do other work, side jobs. But the main thing is like show that you're always busy doing something, making yourself better. That goes a long way to being able to say, like, when an interviewer says, like, well, I see that 6 months passed between when you graduated and got a job. What were you doing? Well, you want to say things that are going to look really good on you. You could say, like, if you're doing cybersecurity, you could say you volunteered your services to some city organizations to help them improve their cybersecurity, or to social organizations or your church or whatever it might be. And then finally, always be a lifelong learner. The reality of this job situation today is that you're likely not going to be at your job for 40 years and then retire. You're going to be changing jobs. You're going to be working for different companies over time. By being a lifelong learner, you're going to be prepared so that if you get laid off, to step into a new job that may be a little different than the job you have right now. You might find a new calling in life, something that you want to do later on that's totally different than right now. But if you don't keep learning, you're not going to have the knowledge that prepares you for those opportunities. So always do that. And obviously, being a lifelong learner also makes you a good citizen, because that way you can make informed decisions and help other people understand what's going on in the world. You're getting a valuable education, not just for a career, but also so that you can be an informed person in the world. And by being a lifelong learner, you support that over time. And then finally, always look for opportunities. Part of that comes from developing and fostering your network, but also from what you see coming across social media, from LinkedIn.com and other things that you read and hear about from other people. Those opportunities might be what give you the next stage of your career, the next stage of your life. So always be looking for those opportunities. So I hope that you found this all useful. I'll be posting on the Open Lab site both this video as well as links to the sample documents for the resumes and the cover letter that I talked about. I'll give you all links to find information about interview questions, both that you would be asked and those you can ask your interviewer, and anything else that I might find that might be useful. And if you know of things that might be useful that I should share, let me know. My email address is jellis@citytech.cuny.edu. You can email them to me, or you can just post them on a link here or a comment here on YouTube or over on the Open Lab site. So I wish you all the very best of luck with your job searches. I wish you the best of luck in life. And if there's any way that I can help you can always reach out to me here at City Tech. So take care. Thanks a lot.